Joining us right now, Cully Stimson. He's the manager in National Security Law Program and also a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Also, he's the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Detainee Affairs. Great person to have on to talk about these 5 Gitmo prisoners, detainees, I guess is the right word for them. Thanks for joining us, Cully Stimson.
Always a pleasure.
All right, so first let's talk about these 5 dirtbags that just got, Harry Reid yesterday. Can we play this? This is Harry Reid cut 32.
Yeah.
Listen to Harry Reid.
So I'm glad to get rid of these 5 people, send them back to Qatar.
Back to Qatar. Of course, they were never in Qatar in the first place, Harry. He's a mental genius, isn't he? But he's glad to get rid of these 5 people. Does he have a reason to be glad to get rid of them now that they're, no longer in Gitmo?
It's an odd statement, to say the least, and so I'm not going to comment any further than that. Obviously, they're Taliban senior leaders. The mugshots have appeared on all the newspapers. The bios, almost their complete bio, has been included in all the major newspapers around the country. There's not much more to the classified files. We know who these guys are, and I just find that comment rather disturbing and odd.
And they're calling them the Taliban Dream Team here, Cully Stimson. But you're hearing from the administration that, listen, this is what happens at the end of wars. This war is winding down. We already announced last week our troop withdrawal. And at the end of the war, you give back your prisoners of war. Is that exactly how we should be looking at these detainees in Gitmo?
Well, look, as a legal matter, when the war ends and we no longer need to use the powers under the authorization of use of military force or the President's Article 2 core constitutional powers as the commander-in-chief, yeah, you do have to release any POWs that you have. They're calling them POWs. They're not. They're unprivileged enemy belligerents. But we're not there. We're engaged in armed conflict. We're detaining people. We're killing people. And so, I think the major... besides the fact of who these guys are and the fact that Bergdahl is not the person that a lot of people wanted him to paint him as, this is a timing issue. We are not at the end of the conflict. If we were completely out of Afghanistan and it was stable and we declared as a country and had a feeling in the Congress that we were at the end of the conflict and the president, whoever he or she was, said, okay, we're going to end combat operations completely, yes, that is the time to do it. But I think the big uproar now is these guys are just being housed in Qatar for a year. Then what? Who knows? Will we still be in combat operations? We may be. And so I think that's the big disturbing point for a lot of people.
All right, so a couple of things here. First of all, were you surprised when you found out that you know about these guys?
I do.
And so were you surprised that they decided to send 5 of these guys back?
Very little surprises me, Brian. I did think that when the deal was scuttled 2 years ago when it was first floated, that probably was going to be the end of it. But my old boss, Ed Fulner, the president of the Heritage Foundation, says in Washington there's no permanent victories, no permanent defeats, just permanent battles. So I'm not surprised this came up. I think that it was horribly managed and orchestrated by the administration.
All right. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about is that you're a former JAG. You know about military.
I still am.
Okay, you still serve. So as a JAG, let me ask you this question: what is going to happen to Bergdahl? Obviously he's going through medical treatment right now, but at some point he gets through that. He comes back to this country. What do you think should happen to this guy?
Well, clearly we're in phase 1, which is the recovery, mental, physical piece for him to make sure he's good to go. But that's going to quickly evolve into a update to the classified investigation of the circumstances behind which he left. And then, because he's still a soldier and because he may be suspected of a crime, they will read him his Article 31B rights, which is in addition to his Miranda rights. And he could lawyer up at that time and decide to remain silent. But the objective, reasonable investigation must take place, and I have every confidence that it will. And then depending on what that shows, he may or may not be charged with a crime. And I listed on another show the other day all the crimes I think he could be charged with, which includes desertion, which includes unauthorized absence. But we can't get ahead of the facts, and I am confident in the criminal justice system and the military that they will get to the right result.
All right, but we know a lot of the facts because a lot of the people who gave their depositions back when he apparently walked away from his platoon are part of that file. And they have come out and publicly told their stories. We know a lot of the facts. Based on that information, do you have any doubt that this guy was a deserter?
I'm not going to presuppose that. It would be inappropriate for me as a former judge in the military to do that. I can tell you that the government will have to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And for desertion to be proved, the government has to prove 4 elements. The third element's the toughest one. We don't know this yet, Brian, and that is that the accused at the time the absence began or at some time during the absence intended to remain away permanently. He may have changed his mind. We don't know. And so I think that the criminal justice system in the military is strong. The convening authority plays a key role. They will decide. I am confident of this, Brian and Larry. At the end of this whole process, he will be out of the Army. He'll either be let to get out, just period, end of story, or he'll be administratively processed and sent home, or he may be court-martialed. But how he exits the Army, I think it remains to be seen.
Cully Stimson, let me I just need to follow up on that because you're a JAG, as we just established. You know military law with regard to something like this.
I do.
Are you telling me that hypothetically here, and I know you don't want to speculate, but walk down this road with me just a moment. Bergdahl, it's proven that he willingly left and intended to leave. It's proven that he left all of his sensitive items, including his firearm and such. He walked off the base. He was gone. He went to the Taliban. It's proven that he sought them out and went to them. And then after he was with them, he decided he changed his mind, wanted to come back, but then they held him and wouldn't let him go. If that's the case, he won't be guilty of desertion?
They may not even charge him with it. The fact is, what they'll look at, in addition to whether there's probable cause to believe that he committed, desertion or unauthorized absence or any of the other charges like Article 99, 104, 105, misbehavior before the enemy, etc., is what's the mitigation? And you can be darn sure, I'm confident of this, if it went to a court-martial, regardless of whatever charges were there, a big part of the defense sentencing case will be that he was at the hand of captives for 5 years, and it could result in no punishment. And you see that in cases where there are no statutory mandatory minimums in the military justice system for hardly any crimes, just a couple 3. And so you could easily see the sentence being no punishment, just the federal conviction, and out he goes. And so it may not be worth the lift. It may be worth the lift to hold him accountable.
You mentioned that this plan to give back the 5 guys was scuttled some 2 years ago. I mean, a pretty strong reaction to the idea, in military, intelligence, and, among some politicians, right?
Yeah, and as I understand it, Secretary Panetta, the former SecDef and CIA director, made some comments yesterday in Pittsburgh that he was vehemently against it. But remember, 2 years ago, Bergdahl may have been in a different health situation. The war was still hot and running. We weren't getting closer to the end. So the circumstances were different. And I would put Hillary Clinton in the same category.
I make to take your point, but I'm just wondering if the reason that they didn't consult with Congress this time around is because they knew what the answer was going to be.
Oh, I'm sure they knew what the answer was going to be, and I'm quite in agreement with former AG Mukasey in his op-ed in the Washington Post, where he says he actually believes Section 1035 very likely presented separation of powers problems, and that's probably the real reason why the administration didn't notify Congress.
All right, Cully Stimson, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.